Now back to the show. This is AM 650's The Law Show.
Welcome back on this Thanksgiving weekend. The Law Show here with our guests from Lindsay Kenney, Angela Thiel, and Christine Eilers. We're talking family law with our guests. And right off the beginning of the show, I talked about divorce and separation issues such as disclosure requirements, real estate, pensions, and companies. Now, we've talked about most of the items on my little list, but we haven't talked about companies. First of all, Angela, what does companies mean in terms of family law and divorce situations?
Well, you have a person who is running a manufacturing facility. Their family business is they're making widgets.
Okay.
And the question is, does that family business have a value? So you have valuators out there. Unfortunately, the rules of court say pick one person and value this company. You know, the problem with it is, of course, the fellow, that's his income earning, that's the family's income earning capacity.
Sure.
And so you're saying, well, how do I divide that with my wife? Because if I can't sort of sell this company, I wouldn't have the ability to earn the income anymore.
Right.
So you hope that there's enough assets that he can keep his company, or maybe he can buy her out over time, from earnings. And one of the things that happens a lot is that people will overestimate the value of a company. Like someone will come in and they'll say, well, my husband's company makes lots of money, so therefore it must have a value. Well, I have a company. It's a law corporation. It's
right.
part of my partnership. But that doesn't have a lot of value, because if I drop dead, it's nothing, and you can't make me keep practicing law. So
right.
the law corporation doesn't have a value. So we often have disputes where one party says, I think this company's got to be worth a lot. And they say that because they'd like to keep the home. And so there's a series of people in town who do valuations of companies. If you don't have a lot of money and, this dispute comes up, sometimes, you can kind of look at a company and say, well, what does it really do? I mean, I had one where the guy was a painting contractor, and the wife was just convinced that company was worth an awful lot of money. And I'm just saying, well, let's use some common sense. I mean, he goes and paints.
Right.
Worth the cans of paint.
Yeah.
Right.
So this concept of, well, if you can't guarantee your work coming in the door, how can the company itself have value?
Right.
But lots of companies, people use their companies as an investment vehicle. They buy a piece of property with a company. They have an investment portfolio in their company's name.
But how does it work, though? Let's suppose reducing the widget example to even more local points of reference. Let's suppose it's a mom and pop business, like a smoke shop or a produce store. That's it. That's the family asset. Maybe they even live over top of the business, as is frequently the case in these small operations. So if now we're divorcing. This thing is going sideways and we're out. So, but the only money that's being produced into this relationship is based on this little family enterprise. So if you break that up, Angela, all money goes away. So how does that get resolved?
As I said, you either hope there's enough other money, or sometimes, and you see people going to court where at the end of the day, the judge says, well, look, there's no way to sell off this business. So you're just going to have to keep being a joint owner of the business and get half the money, or, he gets a little bit more because he's going to stay running the business.
Right.
But you're going to get a share over time. And then, you'll run it for a few more years, and then you'll sell it. And when the kids are grown, now you're going to sell it, and now you're going to split it.
Okay, so the business gets to survive.
The business gets to survive.
And so does the cash flow.
Yeah. And that's not optimum, because then, you find people then will come back to you saying, well, I'm not getting my share of the cash, or
Right.
I don't trust that he's, properly accounting for what's going on. But it's better than the alternative of, well, what do you want this guy to go do? I mean, he, has always been in this business. He's probably not going to find a job that's going to pay him as well as what he can make for this business.
Is the first remedy, though, to look at the possibility of selling the business and just creating a lump sum from which to divide the assets and everybody gets to move on?
No, you try not. I mean, it depends on the age of the couple. I mean, if the fellow is 63 years old, maybe. But if the business owner is 42.
Right.
You know, it's unless you know, and you'll say to him, do you think you can find another job that's going to pay you as well as what you're making out of this business? So sometimes, but that's probably... Yeah,
no, I mean, why would you get rid of your income-producing company, really? It's helping the family even after separation in terms of spousal support and things like that. So
divorce is even dodgier for self-employed people, it sounds like. It's kind of a crass generalization, but it's just, you know, I'm just a civilian here, and that's what it appears to be like for me sitting across the table from you two, just listening to the way things shake out.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Angela was saying earlier is that a lot of people have companies that really are just them. That's just their job,
that's right? Yep.
And so at the end of the day, you're not going to divide that asset. It's just going to be taken into account in terms of a person's income, and that's really it.
But Christine has a file now where even with a valuation from a respected valuator, the wife is still convinced that the business has this big value.
Right.
So, I mean, are those people going to waste an awful lot of money going to trial to have a judge look at her and go, well, ma'am, how did you get that idea? I mean, you've done everything possible to find out the value of the company, and we have to really respect this opinion.
Sure.
And one of the good things the court recently did is they changed the rules, so you have to use a jointly agreed upon expert. So you don't have two experts.
Right. You know, representing the interests of both parties.
Exactly.
and no agreement possible then.
Exactly. So I really think that's going to make a huge difference in terms of keeping the costs down for people and not having people in trials sort of arguing these things. And the poor judges were sitting there going, well, how do I know anything about the value of widgets?
Right. And yet, from time to time, again, I would imagine animosity being the primary reason, judges end up being confronted with these things. Well, okay, if that's what you insist, okay, here's how it's going to get broken up. And that's probably the worst possible remedy, isn't it, Angela?
I would suggest that we have a lot of very good judges, but I don't think they know anything about the manufacturing of widgets.
Well, exactly. And it wasn't a reflection on the opinion-making abilities of judges. It's just they're not business people, and this really is not something that they would prefer to do, I'm sure.
Absolutely not.
No. And really, in terms of the parties, it's better for them to not have a judge making that decision, too.
So back to the very beginning of the conversation in our last minute on this Thanksgiving weekend, we talked about gathering information. If there is a suspicion or a feeling, or you just know this whole thing is starting to unravel, it's not going to end well. You get that feeling, and we're grown-ups. We know what that feels like. Then it's time to right away, as soon as that becomes beyond a little paranoid shaking fantasy, it's time to start informing yourself, educating yourself, and above all, gathering information that may, at some point, Angela, be useful in your own interest.
Well, I not just when the marriage is breaking up. I mean, please go into a relationship understanding you need to know about money. You need to know what's going on in your family.
Right.
You know, women or men that sit back and go, it's their job to look after it. They're really just hurting themselves. And frankly, the marriage isn't good if they're not working together as a team.
And it's the same thing as the prenup. Decidedly unromantic, but really smart and really practical for a lot of reasons.
Absolutely.
All right, so these conversations, again, not terribly romantic, but, you know, as part of forming the basis, Christine, for an actual long-term relationship, kind of important.
Oh, absolutely. It's your life. It's your financial well-being for the rest of your life.
So, you know, if over the Thanksgiving dinner table, people start asking, so what do we have at RRSPs?
Maybe you don't need to bring all the in-laws into that conversation.
Our guests on this episode of The Law Show have been Angela Thiel and Christine Eilers from Lindsay Kenney LLP, online at lklaw.ca. I'm Sterling Fox. We'll see you next time.